The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is considered to be one of the greatest Zelda games ever made and one of the top games in the Super Nintendo library. And oddly enough, it's a game that I never talk about. Before Ocarina of Time, this was almost unanimously accepted to be the pinnacle of the franchise. Not that it had a lot of competition, obviously, because the series was still relatively young at the time. It sanded off a lot of the rougher edges of the NES titles while also adding in a ton of cool new mechanics and telling a far more elaborate story. There are people out there who are convinced that this is the single greatest video game ever made, such as the people who made the Scott Pilgrim movie. I'm pretty sure about 20% of the sound direction of that film was taken directly from this game. Although Zelda is mostly synonymous with giant 3D adventures today, there are still a lot of appreciators for the old school format. Remember, they remade Link's Awakening entirely from the ground up, right? With all of this in mind, you might be wondering, how come I never talk about ROM hacks of Link to the Past? Well, you see, 3D games are just better. Everybody in the entire world knows that 3D games are real games and 2D games are fake games for old people who think Soda Popinski is a more compelling boss fight than ONS from Dark Souls. Okay, not really, but much like with the Mario games, I was raised in the third dimension, so that's where I'm most comfortable. That being said, the thing I try to improve upon with every single marathon is the variety. And having never played a ROM hack of Link to the Past before, it was kind of a no-brainer. Zelda Allhallows Eve is a ROM hack that dropped earlier this year, and it's been getting a lot of praise. Even Mike Matei was playing it, so I guess you could say it's hitting the big leagues. This is one of the games that was actually recommended to me, so you know it's good, because none of you would ever recommend a bad game for me to play, right? Since this is the first Link to the Past ROM hack that I've played, my frame of reference for this game is not nearly as educated as it is with Super Mario 64 or Banco Kazooie or Ocarina of Time and Basil, but even in the face of that, I can still tell this is a really good one, and even though it's out of season like Zelda Revival was, I can appreciate this type of deal any time of year. At the same time, the series has always had a lot of potential in the spooky department, so a Halloween theme is a good fit for Zelda. The premise is that you are Link in the land of Allhallow. It's Halloween and both you and Zelda have been kidnapped by a big-ass hand that dropped from the sky. I hate it when that happens. To save her, it's up to you to battle your way through 4 dungeons and find 4 amulets for your final battle with a major spoiler that I'm not going to give away because that's something that a bad reviewer might do. The gameplay is fundamentally the same as the base game, except this time you can dress up like Michelangelo. Why can't Mario do that? Lame ass. Even though there are spooky elements to the game, the overall tone is lighthearted and funny. The game is less of a horror game and more of a haunted Halloween attraction spin on the original. The dialogue is full of offbeat sarcasm that could almost fit in something like the Mutta games or Paper Mario: The Million-Year Doorway. The NPCs will be asking a favor or telling you some lore, and the dialogue options will be something like, "Sword beams are for bitches." You spend most of your time collecting candy and chocolate bars to get your health and magic back. The pieces of candy from Pokemon are in this game. Team Rocket from Pokemon is in this game. The Pokemon from Pokemon are in this game. The Mario from Mario is in this game. You fight a big-ass Metroid, and the way to beat him is to freeze him, just like in the actual Metroid. There are a lot of Easter eggs that range from obvious to subtle. It's to the point that it could just as easily be an Easter game as a Halloween game, which I am currently playing on Christmas. Like I said before, this is what I love about ROM hacks. They're like a mosaic of inspirations. Look, there's even a dude dressed like Spider-Man. Why won't anybody make me a ROM hack of Spider-Man? If we can get a ROM hack of Discord emojis, surely we can get a mod with this weirdo. Spider-Man with his hand in a cookie jar. Whoever makes me that ROM hack gets, meat. A nice box of Christmas meat. Alright, get out. There's the door. The difficulty overall is manageable. I wouldn't call it extreme in either direction, although it did have a couple of frustrating moments. There were a handful of very specific puzzles like these ones where the solution was to slam into a treasure chest to launch yourself backwards over a gap. I got stuck on these parts and had to look it up. I didn't even know you could do that. I felt like a fucking moron. There are so many enemies and so many pitfalls, and the grass keeps hiding these landmines which blow your legs off, and combine this with cryptic areas that can be difficult to navigate, it can be very frustrating in the worst moments when getting killed puts your ass back to where you started. At least that's how it was for the first 45 minutes of the game. It definitely starts getting way more enjoyable once you start getting all the equipment and health upgrades. But of course that could also be said of the real Zelda titles as well. Once you actually do manage to get the ball rolling in this game, it's hard to stop. It's a relatively short game that only runs about 4 to 6 hours, but much like Zelda Revival a couple days back, it is very much a dense game where none of your time is wasted, except for when you get lost in this dungeon right here. Also like Zelda Revival, this is a game where exploration is not only encouraged, but it's also immensely helpful in the moments where the cuckoos come home to roost. You're really going to want to hoard as many rupees as possible so you can get a giant shield for $500 which blocks 3% more projectiles. The game also has a handful of side quests and mini games which keep things fresh while also adding tremendously to the world building. The world of Allhallow is well realized. There is lore, there is character, there's Spider-Man! Graphically, the game is not a technical showcase, but it plays very effectively on the existing art style that has aged very gracefully on its own, certainly compared to its 3D counterparts. The entire color palette is desaturated in brown and gray to indoctrinate you into this spooky atmosphere, but then there's this level where the walls are made out of nasty flesh and you get the flesh medallion and Link throws up all over the floor. They never actually showed that part, but with these old games you kinda gotta fill in the blanks. It's also got some nice spooky music to back it up. Not every single track in the game was replaced, but there's enough there to keep things fresh and spooky. Even though I never played a Link to the Past ROM hack before, I can tell that Allhallows Eve is a good one. It's focused, it's functional, it bleeds personality, and most importantly, it's fun. Much like Zelda Revival, the game would be perfect on Halloween in theory, but it's also just a good game in general, so there's never a bad time to play it. Good video games will always be in season. This game definitely sold me on Link to the Past mods, and I'm totally down to play more in the future, so if that's something you're interested in, please tell me. But it's gonna have to wait, because tomorrow, I will be discussing a ROM hack that a lot of people have been talking about, yet I have been oddly quiet about. And even though I don't read minds, I got a feeling you already know what it is. And that's all I'm gonna say for now, and until then, Merry Christmas, you're fired!